Psalm 60, our Psalm of the Week, is a prayer of David when he was assailed by many enemies. Interestingly, the context, which is suggested to us by the superscription of Psalm 60, suggests this is a time in which David was largely fruitful and victorious, but certain failures, military failures, had gotten him so down that he wondered if God had forsaken him and his people. David had feared because of these shortcomings that God had cast off his people, that he would not grant them victory. But at the right time, God delivered on his promise to rescue, to save with his right hand, as David says in verse 5. Psalm 60 then is a picture of a God, a faithful God, who sometimes waits to rescue until just the right time. In his right time, he will lead his people into the fortified city, as verse 9 of Psalm 60 says. And actually, this experience of David, recorded in Psalm 60, has always been the story of God's people. All the way back into the Garden of Eden, God had promised to destroy the deceiver Satan and deliver his people by the hand of a seed born of the woman. And then it seemed that for the longest time, God had forgotten his promise. He had shown his people many hard things. To reference verse 3 of Psalm 60, he had made them drink the wine of confusion. By the time Christ did come, there was no king in Israel. Prophetic activity had nearly ceased, and the priesthood had become corrupt. It was not hard to wonder if God had indeed rejected his people, as David wonders in verse 10 of Psalm 60. But as we know, at just the right time, God sent his Son to crush Satan's head, to be exalted as the king over every nation. So in Christ, God proves that David's worst fear could not come true. God could not forget his people. He remembered his holy covenant and his oath, and he rescued at just the right moment. And this story of David, the story of God's people throughout the ages, is our story as well, isn't it? It's possible for a child of God to feel cast off by God, as if God is no longer going out with us, as if God is pushing us out on our own or has left us behind. Children can become discouraged, feeling like everything they do fails. Teenagers can become disillusioned in following hard after God as they see others their age seemingly following their own pleasures. Older people might look back on times in which they walked more closely with God and wonder if their brightest spiritual days are past. So we can become discouraged. We can feel like God has forgotten us. We can feel like we just can't find God in this moment. But remember what David says in verses 4 and 5. You have given a banner to those who fear you, that your beloved may be delivered. A flag, a sign, a symbol that we can run to, knowing that you may be found there, O Lord. That's what David could say here. And so Christ is our banner of hope and love. His first coming convinces us that God has not cast us off. His rescue plan is going forward, and God will not fail. Through God, as David says in verse 12, we shall do valiantly. We will experience some losses, as David evidently did here, heavy losses that will put doubts into our minds. But we need to look at the big picture, recognize God's timing is always best, and at the right time, with God's blessing, we will do valiantly. Let's listen now to Psalm 60 with its lengthy introduction. To the choir master, according to Shushan Eduth, a miktam of David, for instruction when he strove with Aram Naharaim and with Aram Zobah, and when Joab on his return struck down 12,000 of Edom in the valley of Salt. O God, you have rejected us, broken our defenses. You've been angry. Oh, restore us. You have made the land to quake. You have torn it open. Repair its breaches, for it totters. You have made your people see hard things. You have given us to drink given us wine to drink that made us stagger. You have set up a banner for those who fear you, that they may flee to it from the bow, Selah. That your beloved ones may be delivered. Give salvation by your right hand and answer it. God has spoken in his holiness. With exaltation I will divide up Shechem and portion out the valley of Sukkoth. Gilead is mine, Manasseh is mine, Ephraim is my helmet, Judah is my scepter, Moab is my wash basin. Upon Edom I cast my shoe, over Philistia I shout in triumph. Who will bring me to the fortified city? Who will lead me to Edom? Have you not rejected us, O God? You do not go forth, O God, with our armies. O grant us help against the foe, for vain is the salvation of man. With God we shall do valiantly. It is he who will tread down our foes.